Here we can see the urinary bladder and the urethra in a female. Both hollow structures. And here's the urinary bladder in a male and the urethra. The urinary bladder is a muscular organ that stores urine. It doesn't form urine, it doesn't change the composition of urine, it just simply stores the urine until we're ready to expel it from the body. It has the same 4 layers of tissue that we saw in the ureter. It's lined with transitional epithelial tissue, which is very important because the bladder can stretch, right, to accommodate the accumulating urine. There's a submucosa below that. The thick, smooth muscle wall of the bladder is called the detrusor muscle. And then the visceral peritoneum is the outer connective tissue coat. There's only one exit to the bladder, and that is the urethra. Here you can see the male urethra and the female urethra. The male urethra is regionalized. The proximal region is called the prostatic urethra. That's the region that passes through the prostate gland. And then the membranous urethra is just the small segment of urethra that passes through the pelvic floor, the membranous muscle. And then the distal portion of the urethra is known as the spongy urethra or the penile urethra, and that passes through the corpus spongiosum of the penis. In a female, the urethra is not regionalized. It's only about 1 inch long. But in both males and females, there are 2 urethral sphincters. The internal urethral sphincter is right at the base of the bladder. That's smooth muscle. And then the external urethral sphincter is a ring of skeletal muscle embedded in the pelvic floor. And because it's skeletal muscle, it's under voluntary control. We can learn how to control the external urethral sphincter to control urination. So just to take a quick look at the highlights of urination, or the reflex called micturition, all that has to do with is the urinary bladder will fill with urine over time. And as the bladder fills, you can imagine there's a stretch in the wall of the bladder. And that stretch in the wall of the bladder is sensed by our spinal cord, and it's also sensed by the brain. So as long as we have control over our skeletal muscle, somatic nerve activity, what we can do is we can choose to keep that muscle contracted, right? Keep the external urethral closed until a convenient time when we consciously decide to open the external urethral sphincter, which will cause contraction of the bladder and relaxation of the internal urethral sphincter and urination.